Producer dude, here we are again. I think we called this like a special video when we did one before, and you didn't like that term. Have we come up with something better? Because we have hit a unicorn strike again, and we have another special video.
Well, we know it's special because we were last night at about midnight. We were working on getting this going, and we're up real early on Saturday morning to get this done.
True story. It's been a wacky year. There's been a lot of news and a bad light with fishing, and this is one of those good stories. And I think you know where we're going with this, but a good friend of mine caught what is going to be the pending record in Ontario, which is going to be one of the biggest smallmouth ever caught, and literally a lifelong friend. And we got him to come on the show here. And we also have basically an exclusive video of them actually catching it. So there's no monkey business here. And when you see this thing, it's insane. And we even got Travis Hartman. He was actually one of the guys that helped get this certified. And so we're going to kind of talk through this a little bit and actually show this video right now of this fish being caught, which as of right now, no one has actually seen this. So I'm very excited.
Oh my gosh, that's Greg. The 7-pounder, Dad. Wait, got the camera going? Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's like. Oh my gosh, Greg. Oh my gosh, man. Oh my gosh. Oh my God. Oh. Look at that! It's an 8-pounder. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Dad, what did you just catch? I got it out. Oh my gosh, thank you, Jesus. Oh my. That's an 8-pounder. Oh. I'm shaking. That's an 8. Oh my God. That's an 8-pounder, Dad. Oh. That's your baby. Oh, that's a 30-year-old fish. Look at my hands. You. Well, that thing jumped. This isn't a smallmouth. Where's the bait? We gotta weigh this dude here. Oh, Dad. Oh my gosh. Dad. This thing looks. It doesn't even look right. Dad, this thing looks fake. Oh. Oh. Dad. Thank you. It's an 8-pounder, Dad. No, it's a 7, I think. Dad, I don't want to kill this thing. What do we do? I'm almost tempted to call Clemens and meet him somewhere. We gotta get this. This might be a state record. Dad, how big is this? We gotta get this thing on a real scale. Look at the mouth of that thing. Looks like a sheephead. 9 pounds. Dad, we gotta get this thing. It's a world record.
Wow. A little bit of emotion in there. I think without further ado, producer dude, we should just bring in Grant and Gregg Gallagher. And we've also got Travis Hartman kind of hanging in the wings too. But Greg, I've known you a long time. I think I was actually adding up to 27 years. I've never heard you scream like a schoolgirl, but yet here we are.
Yeah, as you know, I'm a very quiet, reserved person, and it's kind of embarrassing watching that video because I'm yelling at the GoPro, and obviously nothing like that's ever happened to me. So, yeah, the emotions were there for sure.
I mean, and as they wouldn't be. I think that producer dude will probably back me up. If that would have been me, there probably would have had to be some bleeping going on. So kudos to you guys, and holding it together and just the raw emotion. If you don't have that, I mean, what's the point of even doing this? But
Right.
So let's back up a little bit and kind of walk us through that clip, per se, without actually going through the clip. But it started for me with a phone call from you, roughly noon-ish, something like that. And when I took the call, it's one of those deals, kind of like when your mom calls at a certain time, you're kind of not normally doing. You should have been in school. You and Grant are both, teachers. And I saw that and I was thinking either something's not right or, you need me to help somebody. And so I'm literally putting the boat on the trailer to come in. We had a good day, had an early day, and my guys were getting on the road. And so I called you and you're like, I think we've got a big smallmouth. And I was like, okay. In typical Greg fashion, for anybody that knows him, yeah, like, I think we got a pretty good one. I'm like, oh, okay. I need to get the boat on the trailer. And you're like, no, I think it's like 9 pounds. And then so immediately I, Googled it because you had very little service, and then we'll talk about what, we kind of brought Travis in here shortly after. But so walk me through basically maybe what we don't even see on that video, or maybe what we do, but give us some insight as what really happened there.
Right. As you know, I sent you a video last week whaling on 4 and 5 pounders. It was all fun and games. Yeah, you know, we were having fun. So we go back out to the same spot. As you mentioned, Grant and I are both teachers, and he teaches in Hudson, Michigan. I teach in Fremont, Ohio. And ironically, we both had the day off of fog day, and fog days for us mean we're fishing. I sent you a picture from, I think, 12 years ago. He was in 6th grade holding 11-pound walleye with your big water sweatshirt on. And then 4 years ago, you and I, we waded off a Catawba at night fishing on a fog day. But anyway, so the fog day, he comes home. So we have a late start to begin with. So we get out to our spot from last week, and they were on moving baits last week. So, I mean, you could do no wrong casting and winding in, and it just wasn't happening for me. I'm fishing the memory. Grant's fishing the conditions. He's putting on a clinic. And finally, he's like, Dad, you got to, do what I'm doing. So my first pitch, I set the hook, and obviously a 10-pound fish, I'm thinking sheep's head. So what you didn't see, the 10-second fight beforehand, I'm actually doing everything you don't do with a trophy fish with 8-pound test line. And then all of a sudden I can't catch up with it. And we see it come to the surface. The water was not clear, for smallmouth fishing. And we didn't see it until it was on the surface. And we looked, and hairs on my leg stood up. Like, what is that? It looked like a grouper. So he's turning spot lock off so I don't get it tangled in. And then, thank God, get it in the net. And that's when the craziness ensued. And it didn't look right. All right. As you can imagine, it came out of the water in the net. Like, what is that? And then I get very loud and crazy for me.
I'm going to use that portion of the clip moving forward in life. It might be your ringtone on my phone from here on out.
Perfect. So, I mean, that's, my first pitch. I hadn't caught a fish yet, and we hadn't been out there very long. I still have my, my coat on from the run, and don't even have a hat and sunglasses on yet, because he just, from the first drop, he was on him, and I was trying to catch him the way I wanted to catch him, and that didn't work out. So, like I said, first pitch, he told me, he said, Dad, I drew a bunch with me. He had a 5-pounder. He's taking off, and then.
And I think this is where it's kind of cool. I had a bunch of fish follow the one I had on to the boat. I could still see there was one blob on forward-facing sonar. It looked pretty big. Dad, you got to pitch out there. And obviously the rest.
And I pitched blind. I was in such a hurry. I didn't even look at the screen. I just made a pitch, and it didn't hit the bottom. And there it was.
Didn't hit the bottom. So, again, do you think, this isn't about me, but I caught an 8-1 like maybe 10 or 12 years ago. And just before that, I had lost one fish, and then I got one that was 7.75, like still my best personal day of smallmouth fishing ever, because I obviously don't get to do it nearly as much as I'd like. And I can remember saying when I saw that fish coming in, this was in the springtime, not the fall, and I'm like, there's one bigger with them. So did you guys, obviously springtime, you have more foul-wing fish probably than now. I mean, do you think that you were just on a school of globber knockers? I mean, 5s are big in most places you go, but do you think that there was some bigger fish on there based on what you know with the live sonar?
Yeah, based off what we saw, I believe so, because I had literally just released a 5.25 pounder, and I had that holding on to it, and then I just saw these fish, like I said, on forward-facing sonar, and I could tell there was one blob out there that looked a little bit different than the rest. Obviously, I didn't think it was a 10-pounder. I wouldn't have told him to pitch out there, maybe. But,
wow! And here we go.
We're very competitive with each other, very competitive. So yeah, it was just a really cool experience. And yeah, forward-facing sonar was really neat to see how many fish were actually in the school and kind of gauge the size of the fish.
So I guess that brings up a question, even though I appreciate the competitiveness. I do that with my buddies. Like if anybody's watched our videos with Country Steve or any of those guys. But Greg, were you throwing something different? Maybe memories, but also saying, hey, if he's catching 5, while that's great, we want to see if we can do something a little different so we're not just both doing the same thing.
We rarely fish the same bait for that reason. I'm constantly, one of us is constantly changing. It seems like every trip, one of us gets something dialed in, and then we do that. And then the other one, something bigger, something smaller, something faster, something slower, something, because we always think there's a bigger one out there, and we're trying to find that one. So
before we get into, we're going to watch this clip again, because I'm sure somebody wants to see this, and we'll kind of, if you could talk us through it. But before we do that, I think we'll talk about kind of how we came in, so you call me and I don't know, you know what I mean? I fish for a living. It's what I do. And I'm trying to find out, like, hey, this is close enough, because the first time I talked to you and the second time I talked to you, you're bouncing around with a scale, and all of a sudden now it's like, hey, when we got this kind of figured out a little bit, like this is probably going to be the record potentially when you had the information from me, and then I, was touching base with Travis, and left close enough that you want to follow through in this, right? But could you believe, granted, Travis made it like a dream, but for an average guy that maybe didn't have some of the phone calls that we made, like, I just wonder how many records maybe lose an ounce or two and don't become a record, or they don't follow through because, I mean, getting serial numbers on scales and all these different things. I mean, talk to me a little bit about, like, did you think it was going to be that involved, even though, again, this is going to be one of the fastest turnarounds in Ontario history, but nevertheless, there was a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of embarrassing. Again, I wanted to keep fishing. I mean, you catch a 9-pounder and he was whaling on him. And all of a sudden, we're taking time away from weighing it. And I just wanted to take pictures and video and get back and let her go. And then again, you mentioned the record. They never, ever entered my mind. So then,
we heard Grant say it though. We heard Grant saying it.
Yeah, he did. But, in excitement,
when that fish got into the boat, I mean, we've seen plenty of 6-pounders, lots of 6-pounders, and this thing just dwarfed them. I mean, you can just tell when a fish gets over a certain weight, they just look different. And this
I can tell you by, dragging that thing around with you from way into the final process that it is totally built different. Like you said, like a grouper, the head structure on that. And I'm interested to hear what Travis has to say. It was obviously a smallmouth, but it was a totally different animal. It reminded me of like my buddy Greg, different Greg from college. He's 6'9" with his shoes off, right? And he's just a different dude when you see him walk through compared to even me at a fairly tall guy. And I think that was kind of the same thing with the smallmouth.
Yeah. So again, I little divine intervention, whatever you want to call it. I never have cell reception out there at that spot, and I was able to call you, and then you kind of got the ball rolling, and then Grant runs for Jason Clemens, and Jason was out there somewhere we knew, so Grant called him because he has a really accurate scale, so we ran down to him. Jason jumped in the boat and went 10.16, I think, and then you get that feeling in your stomach that, well, this is something special. I guess I have to quit fishing. I only got to fish for half an hour on my day off, so. And then talk to you.
I think it worked out okay for you.
it did for sure. But yeah, we looked at each other. Yeah, we kind of want to keep fishing, but don't mess this thing up. I kept in the back of my mind from the time I was fighting it to getting it back to shore. Don't mess this thing up. And then I knew you would be the person to know because I knew you knew Travis, and then maybe I was hoping to, and you guys did, and thankfully expedite the whole process. Yeah, if I didn't have you, I might release the fish. With the video and great bunch of pictures, no less, but I didn't know. So.
No, and I think that's something that should be brought up. Like in this process, I can tell you like 20 times Greg said to me, hey, I want to release this fish like now or whatever. And I said, it's really healthy. We just need to hold on and see what's going on here. And let's handle it the least possible. Your bass boat's live well was kicking great. And so kudos to you though, because that was your first thing. You're not a record chaser, but I was basically beating on him, guys, to say, like, listen, this is, I think, going to be pretty significant. And I was trying to be the calm, rational one in the room, which, as producer did, will tell you, is not normally the case. So I knew we had to bring in other people, and Travis definitely helped with that. The only thing that I could tell you, besides the screaming schoolgirl thing, I mean, I'm going to buy you a net for Christmas. Because I saw Grant, I mean, he's not a small guy if you know him. But those arms aren't long enough, or that net handle is not long enough. Because I'm just saying, if that would have been if that had been Country Steve there with that net, we probably aren't having this conversation.
And Ross, it's pretty funny because I've been known to knock off a 10-pound walleye or two. So I kind of got my redemption with this one, netting a 10-pound smallmouth.
Yeah.
So kind of
all those knocked off walleye
I think that's how you earn probation in my boat.
Might be.
No.
So, producer dude, can we play that video one more time with the volume down a little bit and let Greg kind of give us a little play-by-play and let him hear himself scream like a schoolgirl?
Nice.
Oh my gosh, that's Greg. The 7-pounder, Dad.
So
Greg. We thought it was a sheephead, and then when we saw it, and then that's when obviously we started to panic. Grant turns the spot lock off right there so it doesn't get tangled in the prop. And then the rest, I think we kind of blacked out. Like it was a blur.
I mean, the fish came in kind of easy for what you think about, like how hard a 3-pound smallmouth.
I was just going to say, I've had 3-pounders fight and pull and drag and jump a lot more than that thing. She couldn't get out of the water. She splashed, and she was so big she couldn't get out. Made a dive, a short dive or two. Again, 8-pound test. Trusted my drag, but yeah, it was meant to be, I guess.
So when you're fighting in that, even though it's probably only 20 seconds or under a minute, I'm guessing from watching this, are you thinking about your knots? Are you thinking about I've got an 8-pound leader on here and I should have had a 10, or is any of that stuff running through your mind? Because that's how my crazy mind works.
Typically it does. I think it happens so fast that my brain wasn't processing that. Like I said, I'm literally pulling on it before you see the video to get it up because it's a sheephead. I want to get it out of the water back in so I can catch smallmouth. And then all of a sudden I couldn't catch up with it. And then that's a telltale sign that, it's coming up. And then wait for it. And then you can see the water's chalky, and we didn't see it until it was on the surface. And then, yeah, I didn't fight it well. I mean, I fought fish and lost fish, fighting it a lot better than what I did. So again, it was meant to be.
It had to be meant to be, yeah, because it's so many people I've seen just in my boat, with big smallmouth or walleyes. They think they literally the same as you, like it's a sheephead. My biggest walleye ever, 35 inches long, the guys wouldn't even net it in the boat with me because they thought, oh, it's a sheephead. I'm not netting your sheephead, and that's so true. And I think why so many of these trophy fish, never make it to where we're at right now because of either gear or people getting a little jumpy. And so kudos to you. But yeah, that's crazy video. And it's so great that for your, sake that you had the video rolling, because me and producer dude he would have had a dead battery, or we would have been eating jelly donuts or something. We probably wouldn't have got it. Just going to be honest.
Trust me. Usually that's what happens to us, or it's out of focus. I mean, it's somewhere else, and for sure, yeah, so yeah, it was meant to be.
So Travis, you've been a good boy in the weightings there. We appreciate you coming on. Travis Hartman, Ohio Fisheries Supervisor, Director, Champion, whatever your title is. It's way too long for me to say. But the long and the short of it is, tell me the significance of this. I know you always are our numbers guy. You've been on our podcast and videos for a long time. I mean, this is a big deal, isn't it?
Yeah, I think I have to say first and foremost, guys, thanks for sharing this with me and with our staff. We're 2 days later here, and I still really don't have the right words to describe seeing that fish and watching that video. But, it's a truly unique catch. You think about the world record from Dale Hollow down on the Tennessee-Kentucky border. It was an 11-pound, 15-ounce fish. So you were only 1 3/4 pounds short of a world record. And if you compare it to other state records, that Tennessee-Kentucky fish and one other fish are bigger on a certified scale than this one. And we started digging in, and this is, as far as we're aware, the first certified Great Lakes smallmouth bass over 10 pounds. I mean, that you think about Sturgeon Bay and the St. Lawrence River and all the hot fisheries right now and the big tournament weights, and they're incredible fisheries, just like Erie and St. Clair are. And this is a different fish. This one is more unique.
Give us a little insight too, because obviously that's why you're here. I'm not the biologist, but what I've been told in the past, tell me how accurate we are. Fish that are down south, like Tennessee, Kentucky, are at the kind of northern range of what a southern fish would be per se, but yet they have growth periods that are longer than what we have here. So that's what's even more impressive, right? Like this fish was not growing 12 months a year like he would down south. And so in theory, to me, it's even bigger than those other ones because of just the whole way that they grow. Is that fairly accurate?
Yeah, you think about the amount of the year that they're in, like a more ideal growth condition down south. And then you add on top of that, and I don't know the specifics for each body of water, but some of those are trout stocked systems. So between shad species and trout species, they have a lot of food, and they're in more ideal growth temperatures for more days of the year.
So this record is potentially, looks like it's going to be breaking a 68 or 69-year-old record. And again, back in the day, I've seen a lot of records that keep getting overturned because all of a sudden maybe things weren't with the process. Like 68 years ago, they didn't go through what we went through a couple days ago with this. I mean, this is a whole kind of different ball of wax. Obviously there's not an answer for this. I mean, but seemingly talking with the Ontario officials and yourself, we wanted to make sure everything was dotted and crossed, because they're really thinking like, this is probably not going to be broken anytime soon, is it?
Yeah, I feel really good about this one. You know, there's a handful of things you can look at with this. This was clearly a fresh fish caught that day on this system. You know, we didn't have a fish encased in ice or even frozen show up at our door without any validation of where it came from. So that's really cool. I mean, they did a great job keeping it alive. It was in really good shape, and we all, you know, wish it could have been released, but just as a nature of these record processes, that's not possible. I was talking to staff, and we thought how cool it would be to have an acoustic telemetry tag in that fish and release it, but we followed the process, and we worked with the Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry and their angler group, OFAH, that runs this process that certifies fish. And I'll tell you what, it's a great partnership. I sent an email as soon as I got the call. They immediately got on it and got back to me and confirmed what we needed to do. And quite frankly, this is going to be one of the quickest fish certifications we've really seen in any jurisdiction. We're dotting a few I's and crossing a few T's, but this was really a great partnership, and it was right from the start to the finish.
And again, I don't want to be, I'm not trying to go in a negative route, but we've had some negative press recently with fishing, specifically very, very close to us here, right? And so when you notified us that we had to keep this fish, you know, it was not going to be able to be released, and that in theory, Greg was supposed to keep this in his possession on ice for X number of days until some of this process is gotten to the next step. I know I jumped in there just because of what we just went through here. Fortunately, not with any of us, and said, hey, can you guys keep that at your, you know, fisheries building, put a tag on this thing, lock this away. And, you know, even we're going to take this one step farther just so that there's no questions, because there's been a lot of questions with records around here, and anybody that really knows stuff about our local bass stuff will know exactly what I'm talking about. But you guys are actually going to x-ray this fish as well.
That's the plan. So they're OFAH is very happy with everything they've seen, with the forms that Greg filled out, the weight that we got, the lengths and girth, everything that we did at our office. And they mentioned, and it's really cool they get this. They said this is an important record, and this is potentially one that's going to last a long time. So let's do this right. Let's do what we can to confirm that every piece of this is legitimate. And I think it's, you know, we just talked about it a little bit. It's really cool how this all played out. Greg and Grant, you guys had an awesome catch and did the right thing and got a hold of someone and found out what to do. You know, Ross, thanks for caring and getting a hold of me, and it just couldn't have gone any better.
So, I mean, you don't like, because we're all fielding questions, right? And that's kind of why we're doing this, is because there's one shot, put it out there instead of 4,000 people trying to ask the same question. We don't know how old this fish is. Once Greg, I believe he's going to take this and have a mold made of it, because there are no molds, believe it or not, for reproduction on a 10-pound 0.15. They don't exist somehow. We'd have to use a grouper. So I believe that's what he's going to do. And then you guys are actually going to take some samples from that and try to get a really specific age. And we're going to learn a lot from this, right? I mean, this fish realistically, I mean, I know you don't know today, but this fish wasn't going to last a lot longer, was it?
So this is a truly unique situation, because I'm not aware of a record fish, at least not here in Ohio or on Lake Erie, that we were able to follow up and do a full workup after the fact. So like you mentioned, Greg's going to do what he'd like to do and get the mold made. And if it all works out, it'll come back to us. And, you know, when some of these old records were set, we were only aging with scales, and those, as we know, are not real accurate for old fish. So we're going to cut the head open on this fish and get the otoliths, the inner ear bones. And they're just like a tree. They give us one ring per year, and we'll get a very accurate age on this fish. And my guess is it might not be as old as some think. Now, you know, we've never sampled a fish this size. We won't know until we age it. But what we see with walleye is walleye live as long as 26 years. Our oldest walleye aged is 26. But every trophy, every 30-plus inch, 10-plus pound fish is 12 to 19 years old. The biggest, fastest growing fish, the real trophies, the ones we've seen do not make it to 20, even though smaller slower growing walleye might make it to 25 or 6. So with smallmouth, some of the oldest fish we've aged have been around 17 or 18 years old, I believe. Who knows? This one might be 20 plus. It's a very unique fish that we've never seen. But if you made me put my guess and say how old is that fish, I'd say 16 or 17.
Fair enough. Is there anything else from a biology standpoint that we're hoping to learn since you do have this sample, if you will?
So there's some interesting dynamics with smallmouth with male and female ratios. You know, with walleye, all trophies are females, no doubt about it. You'll get males up to 27 or 28 inches. You'll get 6-7 pounds. But the females are the trophies. They're the ones that get big enough, heavy enough. They're the 10 pounders to 15 pounders. With smallmouth, if you look at 5-pound fish, especially during spawning time when the males are sitting on the nests and eating lots of gobies, it's a pretty even mix with trophy fish. It's sometimes even skewed towards males, which is not the case with walleye. So I'm curious. My guess would be this is a female, but we don't know. We haven't cut open fish of this size. And I was mentioning earlier to Ross before we started, we've sampled a lot of smallmouth from tournaments, and we've seen lots of 4 to 6.5 pound fish. But we've never seen a fish over 6.5. Like this is almost 4 pounds bigger than anything we've ever handled.
Well, and the crazy part of this whole thing for me is I don't know if you caught this, because obviously there's a lot of motions going on. Everybody had cameras out and things, and sometimes you miss the little details or things that get said. But I was listening to one of the videos, and there was a couple of the fisheries guys from your office that were like, it doesn't even have a big belly.
Right.
It really didn't. It didn't look like, hey, this thing is loaded up with eggs. And who knows if that's a male or female then because of that. But it was so broad that even in the pictures, it doesn't do it justice. The head was shaped like just a different deal. Yeah. I mean, and you see that like bump on there, the same thing you see like with big walleyes or bluegills, where you could literally, even though the head looks kind of small for people watching this, Grant put his entire hand in his mouth.
Well, I'll interrupt you right there, Ross. That was like the oh my gosh moment for me, because I watched Zach, who's a fairly tall biologist, big guy, and he grabbed the fish, and he grabbed it almost like you would a big largemouth. He took his hand and grabbed the lower jaw, and that fish's lower jaw was larger than his fist. He could have put his whole fist in that fish's mouth. I was like, wow, this is just different.
Yeah, to put that in perspective, and just crazy. That picture does not do it justice as big as it looks, obviously.
Well, and what you pointed out is that this is a Lake Erie smallmouth on steroids. It's not long. For a 10-pound fish, you might think 25, 26, 27 inches. It's not. This was 23 3/4. And it's extremely tall. The girth was 19 3/8, and it's not fat. It doesn't have a big distended belly. It's not, you see a few of those like misshapen smallmouth that are just, unbelievably fat. This one's not. It's extremely thick. It's extremely tall. It's a Lake Erie smallmouth that's bigger than any other we've seen.
So with that said, I mean, how long have you seen smallmouth in some of your tests or however you've gathered samples?
Well, this goes back to I wasn't here, but our office handled the Ohio record back in the early 90s. Starting the early 2000s, we started sampling some tournaments as tournaments became more prevalent. And as we noticed, hey, these tournaments catch bigger fish than we're able to. And then 10 years ago or so, we started an annual September smallmouth survey that we complete. So 10 to 15 years of really good data and going back to the 90s for, data collections here and there. So we're 3 decades into smallmouth sampling and never seen anything over 6.5 pounds.
Very interesting. Well, let's talk a little bit with the man who made this happen, the captain, even though he may look like the co-captain here, Greg Gallagher. I've been busting your chops. I've called you bass hole, many other things that I'm sure your mom was not happy with. But the thing that I don't think people understand on this, and I'm not saying that records and things, because it seems like so many of like the biggest walleyes that are caught, guys are catfishing them or something, right? And that's luck or that's just random stuff. You guys were out there specifically. I mean, you even told me like your dad had been sending me pictures, on these nice ways. We had really bad weather, really nice weather, and when we've had the nice weather, you guys have been sneaking out there. and you're specifically targeting big smallmouth. Like there was no mistake what's going on. No, I'm sure you both would agree you didn't think you were going to get a 10-pounder, but that was the intention, right?
Yeah, definitely. That's been our whole goal this fall. Like we said, we've caught plenty of 6-pounders. We wanted to get to that 8-pound class. And yeah, so we put in lots of work the last 5 years to be able to make something like that happen. Of course, we didn't think it would be a 10-pound fish, and this is incredible. So it's really cool to see some hard work the last 5 years pay off.
So for people listening to this, there's a lot of people that are always, oh, it's lucky, it's lucky. Tell us what hard work means to you, or what are the steps how you get to this day, so that even if your dad reels like a crazy man thinking it's a sheephead, we still get the fish in.
Right, exactly. Lots of hard work for us has been graphing. He hates to graph, so I'll have to go by myself or take someone else to go graph. That's looking for those irregularities that smallmouth like to school up on, whether that be a big boulder, a little subtle rise in the bottom, or whether it be sand to rock, sand to mud, just something that's going to attract those smallmouth bass. And that's lots of hours behind the wheel. It's boring. It's not fun. But when you find something magical, it makes it worth it.
It's funny you say that, because I was just talking to a really good friend of mine, which I will remain nameless, even though I'm sure people could figure this out pretty quickly. He's won more money than anybody this year, walleye fishing, crazy amount. And we were just talking. He said, yeah, I spent 40 hours last week graphing. Now he works a so-called full-time job, right? And he's going out on bad weather days and he's graphing and he's looking for different areas, and he has a crazy waypoint system. So he's saving things when the current's coming here, when the wind's here. He knows these are the milk run of spots, that I'm going to. And I guess that's kind of what you're doing. And then you're implementing, more forms, just like we would walleye fishing or for other guys doing other things, right? You're using 2D sonar. Then we're going down to side imaging as we change our speed. So guys, listen to this, understand this. When you're going fast, you use 2D. Then when we start to slow down, we're using side imaging. And then ultimately the finishing cup. And, maybe one of the reasons that you got the fish that you did was, the live sonar. Right? Is that kind of the progression?
Yeah, definitely. I can't tell you how many spots we found this past year running 30, 35 mile an hour on using 2D. A lot of people think 2D is something of the past. I think it might be our most valuable asset right now, to be able to find these areas. And then, yep, you're exactly right. You find something that catches your attention on 2D, you can slow down, use that side imaging, use that down imaging, and then kind of break it apart, find the sweet spots in those little areas. And then finally, once you kind of find something that you think looks fishy, it has bait, it has the right bottom features, you can start to use that forward facing sonar, live sonar, whatever you want to call it, and kind of dissect these areas and literally hunt individual fish. It's really unbelievable what technology is becoming. You love it, you hate it, it's here. I want to put everything in my favor. Whatever we can use to catch more and bigger fish, we're going to try to do it.
Well, when you have a situation like this, and I just know from my own standpoint, I do a lot of seminars and speak to people, and they're always like, hey, what bait, what this, what, and really, as a guy that fishes walleyes, and, I'm running 8, 9, 10 lines per day, and we're catching them on this and that and all different things. And it's the same thing with this. Like, those are what we just talked about. Nobody wants to hear that. They don't want to hear what you did and how many hours that you weren't catching fish. Right.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
I mean, that's the thing here is people are like, some of the best fishermen I know they are spending the most hours not catching, and not because they aren't capable, because they're looking for that next thing. And I think that's the thing that hopefully, especially some of the younger guys realize, is that, like, if you want to prosper, you've got to have a lot of basically pain in the gain, and don't focus on what color lure or this and that, because that changes so much. Just like, when I looked at the deck of your guys' boat, I did not see a dialed in presentation there. I mean, I was looking at all your rods. I'm not going to lie to you. They're everywhere. Everywhere you had a strap, you had them on. And obviously at some part, those all play a role, right? But really, when it comes down to it, the nuts and bolts is, in this spot, this may be blown out, or something changes and it's not good anymore. A lot of my really good smallmouth spots from 20 years ago, we just don't catch them there anymore. Rather it's the gobies or water clarity change. But so this is an ongoing deal. A lot of people listening is probably thinking like, hey, he's got a rock pile or whatever the structure is. We're not even talking about that. No offense for you guys listening. Too bad. But whatever that structure is, that may be no good in a year or two. And it's like, if you want to continue to have, the success you have, from your college fishing and fishing with your dad and some, a bunch of the derbies you're doing, I mean, it's super important to just keep going. Just like, any business, like, you can't rest on your laurels. Is that kind of what you're thinking about?
100%. These fish that we were targeting were very pelagic fish. The only reason that they were in this general area was the way the current and bait kind of set up. So we knew everything was kind of lining up to be a special day. And again, I don't think it's a certain rock or certain whatever. You just got to fish the conditions. It's somewhere new every day. Wherever we go fishing our next trip, we're not going to catch them off the same area. It's just, that's what's cool about the Great Lake smallmouth right now. They seem to become very pelagic in the last couple of years. Like I said, we just started smallmouth fishing in the last 5 years, and we've kind of gotten to see the little bit of the evolution of how these fish set up. It's been really neat.
So is there any closing thoughts that you can give me on what it takes to catch, maybe not even a 10.15, because I'm kind of just, I like to have goals, but I'm feeling like maybe 9.5 would be okay here. It was what, 20 to give the guys the dimensions that haven't watched some of the social media stuff, 23 3/4 and 19 3/8 girth.
Yeah.
Correct.
So what are some closing things that you would advise to me and to everybody listening to this on what you need to do?
I just want to we don't rely totally on electronics, just your senses. We started smallmouth fishing in the Sandusky River, where it's just reading current, reading eddies and stuff like that. So we try to still keep basic, what you learned of walleye fish. You're still looking at the conditions, like you mentioned before: wind, water clarity, temperature. Sometimes you just know, like, I think it's going to go down here, and other times, I don't have count. So again, we don't totally rely on electronics. I think our natural senses are still in play there.
But I definitely think if you can combine those two,
Yeah.
that's something pretty special. I think that's why we make a pretty good team. He's got the senses, and I love electronics. I love that stuff. It just makes sense to me. So we kind of try to put that together the last year, and thank God we've been successful with it.
Well, then, the graphing part, I keep telling Grant, I'm 54, Grant. I'm 54. I don't have that many years left. I just want to hook, set the hook. But I understand the importance. I mean, he's the one that put me on the spot. His bait, all I did, was I was a recipient. And I told you before, it was kind of bittersweet. I wish he would have caught it, obviously. He like I said, he put the work in. It was his bass cat. And so.
It's been really cool. But the last thing, kind of answer your question, Ross, I mean, you have to put in the work. You really do. You have to put the time on the water. It's not an overnight success. It's really not. And we took our lumps. We took our bruises. We'd catch 6, 7 bass when we first started. Like, wow, we killed them today. Like, we had a great day. And now if we don't catch 80, 90, we're like, we suck. Like, what happened? So it's been – Lake Erie is getting better and better. The Great Lakes are getting better and better. But, again, I think it comes from we put in lots of hours trying to perfect our craft.
Well, as Kenny Rogers said, you have to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. So all the electronics in the world, if you don't know when to make the moves and shake. So it sounds like you guys are definitely a good team and father-son thing for trusting each other. My closing question just is, I've helped you guys with some equipment and things through the years. Do you need me to update your GPS? I've got all that stuff right here to do it. I'll even come to your house and get it from you if you need me to update that for you.
Ross, as you know, I hold nothing back from you. Again, we owe this to Travis. Thank you very much. And then I know, Ross, you got the ball rolling. And again, thank God I had cell reception. I never have cell reception out there. Honestly, I mentioned it before. I would have taken a lot of pictures and video and watched it swim off with a smile on my face, not knowing that was, a record fish.
Very good. Well, we appreciate you guys giving us the kind of bump on this thing and the exclusive video. And I can't thank you enough for your time. And I can tell you guys, anybody listening to this, it couldn't happen to two nicer guys. And thanks, Travis, for kind of help orchestrate not only today, but the whole thing. Because, yeah, truly, there was a lot of things going on. We'll probably talk about this later. I can see an article in the future of like, hey, if you catch a trophy fish, here's what you probably need to be thinking about ahead of time. Because, I mean, just something as simple as me bringing you a cooler, like there's just a lot of little things that if you're going to do this, that again, you smash the record, but a lot of times just an ounce is going to make the difference between getting and not getting. And it very easily could have went the wrong way there without having some of the steps, and Travis helped them out. So thanks again for giving us your time. Unless you have anything else you'd like to share, like wave points, like anything like that. Did I mention that yet?
You always have an open seat in our boat, Ross, so you know that.
I appreciate that. Well, guys, thanks again for giving us your time, and congratulations on this. And I hope it doesn't wear off anytime soon, because you deserve it. And look at that smallmouth. Good gracious. Oh, crazy.
Thanks
For having us.
Congrats,
Thanks
guys.
for tuning in
That's
to
really
the Big
awesome.
Water Fishing Show. Producer dude, can they find us on where? Like Instagram, Facebook,
Yes,
bigwaterfishing.com?
Instagram. Yes, they can find us on Instagram.
I mean, we have a podcast too, don't we?
Podcast. Yep. Anywhere you can find a podcast, you'll find us there. Big Water Podcast.
Producer dude, are we done?
We're done.
Let's go home.
Yeah.